crime. You have to face the music, do the time.
Good evening, parents of the West Shore School District, and this is Mariana, and welcome to the Watchdog Report, the Midnight Edition. And today we're going to be howling out some truths about the policy meeting this evening. Now, my intention was to be at both meetings tonight. However, we get involved in these situations with the school district and speaking in the meetings and things, but there are times that we do have to take time and allot time to what matters most, and that is our family. So there was an event that one of my children were participating in, and my presence needed to be there, and I decided to spend time with my family and enjoy the presentation. And that was out in Cedar Cliff High School. They had their spring concert, and kudos to Mr. Toppings. Mr. Toppings, he does some fantastic things with these kids. Absolutely fantastic. And he's one of my son's favorite teachers, and he is so gifted. Mr. Toppings is so gifted. And he definitely is an asset to the West Shore School District. So, Mr. Toppings, if this video gets to you, congratulations. Thank you for everything that you do for our children. I definitely appreciate it. Now, that being stated, let's talk about today's policy meeting. So, like I stated, I wasn't there present, but I was watching. And in the policy meeting, that was the first meeting at 4:30. I nearly fell off my chair. Nearly fell off my chair. Now I got to see the meeting after it ended because I was still working, but I turned it on. Okay, and nearly fell off my chair when I heard Tasto say or imply that there is no graphic pornographic material in the West Shore School District. I was like, really? Really? So, you guys know me, right? Listen, there's a saying, okay, ever since I moved to Central PA and married my husband, and that is when things go south, you rather deal with Mr. Reed and not Mrs. Reed. Mr. Reed is reserved, articulate, and intelligent. Mrs. Reed is a Puerto Rican to the core. And what I mean by that is that anybody that has a Puerto Rican mama or knows about a Puerto Rican mama will tell you, you play with our cubs, you play with my family, you put in question the integrity of my husband or mine, well, things have a way of going south fast. Because I, along with Mr. Reed, will defend our family, our children, and any other child that needs defense in a heartbeat. When you touch my family or somebody dear to me, it's not pretty. And although I'm not a violent person, I will make sure that the truth gets out there at any cost. But the truth will get out there. So when I heard him say that, you guys know me, right? Okay. I went to my computer and I send this image to the whole school board, including Todd Stoltz. And I reminded Todd Stoltz that about, I would say, 2, maybe 3 years now, myself and my husband went to the school board to advise them that this piece of trash was in the West Shore School District. So I said, this may not be Shakespeare. You can't, because they went into this thing about Shakespeare. Oh well, Shakespeare implied things about sexuality. But Shakespeare was classy about it, especially in that time. This, what was found in Cedar Cliff High School, is trash, and as you can see for yourself, it's pornography. So you would think that by this point, right, Tostos and Brian Geiswhite would have learned not to poke the bear. So he sends me an email, and in the email, he was claiming ignorance and asking me, when did this happen? Did you report it to us? And all this other stuff. Now, that really got me going. So, I am going to share, I am going to share where you find people my reply to Mr. Stokes. You see, and I goes, Mariana, it's not Mr. Stokes, it's Dr. Stokes. Listen, this dragon lost my respect a long time ago. And if you want me to refer to you as a doctor, behave as a doctor. So, like I was stating, this is my reply to Mr. Stokes. And I'm going to put my reply on the screen as I read so that you can follow along. Okay? Hey, I might just have some extra time tonight and translate this in Spanish too. That's a thought. I speak various languages. That's a thought. Let's start. Oops. Let's start. Okay, there we go. All righty. Dear Mr. Stokes, I was appalled upon reading your response, which appears to claim ignorance regarding an issue that was directly brought to your attention. If necessary, I am prepared to provide you video documentation from meetings where my husband brought this to your attention and also to the attention of the former school board president, Brian Geiswhite. You assured us that this will be investigated, that you would investigate the matter and follow up. Yet, not only did you fail to do so, but you also interfered when Mrs. Thomas attempted to conduct her own investigation. Your lack of action is unacceptable. As we stated in June of 2023, our work schedules delayed our ability to bring this issue forward in person. But we made the effort to do so and explain to you what we found in Cedar Cliff High School on the back to school night on August 2022, with the expectation that you, in good faith, will act to ensure such material was not present in our schools for the upcoming academic year. We found a copy of Gender Queer and This Book is Gay in the Cedar Cliff High School library. Upon investigation, my husband realized that the book was not in the library catalog, which led us to believe that this book must have been donated, and we all know that donated books are not included in the catalog. Keep that in mind, guys. Anytime any organization donates a book to the West Shore School District, it's not included in the catalog. Okay? And this is something that hopefully in that new library policy that they're creating, they will find remedy for. Let's continue. Instead, rather than investigating as promised, you and Mr. Geiswhite confronted my husband, insisting he could not make these baseless allegations. Witnesses, including former Moms for Liberty chapter leader Allison Shipp and Christy Harmon, were present that evening and took issue with the dismissive treatment my husband received. When we returned at a subsequent meeting with the materials in question in hand, you feigned surprise. Both you and Mr. Geiswhite tried to portray my husband as a liar. Mr. Geiswhite raised his voice to my husband, and if you recall, I was there that night. And I silenced Mr. Geiswhite, reminding him that we are the constituents. And I promised him that the same way we voted him in, we will vote him out. And unfortunately, back then, if we knew what Brian Geiswhite really stands for, we would have never voted for him. And we did. Let's continue. Furthermore, during that meeting, Mrs. Abigail Turney made a concerning statement implying that parents who question LGBTQ resources can endanger the school district by getting sued, and that this had already happened in other school districts. This, combined with the false allegations disseminated to the York Dispatch and Penn Live, demonstrate a pattern of deflection and misrepresentation aimed at discrediting concerned parents. So, when my husband and I spoke in that meeting, less than 24 hours later, and this must have been Abigail who made the call because there was really nobody present. This is when the school board meetings were boring. Okay, there was nobody present outside of us. Less than 24 hours later, the friends of the West Shore School District, who I lovingly call the fiends of the West Shore School District, and the York Dispatch and Penn Lives, okay, came out with hit articles on me and my husband, claiming that we were um, the extremist parents of the West Shore School District. And the Friends of the West Shore School District went as far as to collect money. They started a campaign to collect money to silence these parents, okay, these extreme parents of the West Shore School District. And Taz Stoltz, okay, on social media, and I still have the article, pretty much stated that we were liars and that what we said had no basis. Okay, that's what happened, guys. Let's continue with the letter. Let me make one thing abundantly clear. I am not a parent who engages in games. As a taxpayer and hence your employer, I expect you to fulfill your professional responsibilities with integrity and accountability. It is time you upheld your duties and address this matter appropriately. If you require video documentation of the meetings in question, I am fully prepared to provide them. Transparency is essential, and I will not hesitate to ensure that the true nature of these events is brought to light. And I will continue to work, parents, until the truth is brought to light. The truth of everything that has been happening behind those doors at the West Shore School District with the former president, who was Brian Geiswhite, and the former school board members and the veteran school board members who are still sitting there, okay, who all allowed this. Please note, and this is a note to Mr. Stoltz. Please note, any and all interaction on your part will only be accepted via email. So don't even bother calling me, Stoltz. Don't. As I stated in the past, you have lost all of my respect, and I consider you untrustworthy. Sadly enough, that night you could have made an ally, but instead you created an advocate. And I know many conservative parents of the West Shore School District is thanking you for that because you awoken the giant. So, that being stated, for him to have the audacity and claim or pretend that he has no knowledge of this is crap. And I'm going to say it's crap because I can produce, because I still have the videos of those two meetings. Of those two meetings. Furthermore, Mr. Cambrick's brother, I believe his name is Frank, when Casey spoke about what we found with that genderqueer book, he actually made copies, okay, and they gave it to the school board members. Mr. Cambrick's brother said to my husband, I will not put this in my car because if for whatever reason a cop will stop him, he wouldn't want a cop to see that in his car. So if you don't want a cop to see that in your car, what makes you think that we want that in our schools? This is why, you know, I applaud the school board for doing what they're doing. And I think that that library policy needs to be tweaked up just a little bit more. And then the thing is, for him and Brian Geiswhite to claim that they had no knowledge of it, it's a joke. It's a joke. Because what I didn't know at the time, okay, and one of the parents informed me afterwards, was that Brian Geiswhite's wife was the head librarian, okay, um, and she was also heading an LGBTQ club in the West Shore School District called the Gay Straight Alliance, and it was all about LGBTQ. Now, being the librarian, heading the Gay Straight Alliance, you really think that she did not know and that he did not know that this piece of trash was in the library? No, he was very scared. Brian Geiswhite was very scared when that came out. And Abigail Cherney was, the Jezebel that she is. But you know what? I have to give her credit because at least Abigail Cherney, we know she's a Jezebel. She's true to her nature. She shows her true colors and she'd move from it. I'd rather deal with a Jezebel than with a two-faced snake. Now, for Brian Geiswhite to claim no knowledge, that's another one, to claim no knowledge while his wife is that was the head of the Gay Straight Alliance and probably still is. I'm not sure though. I'm not sure if she still is, but she was back then, and I didn't know that until the parents brought that to my attention. Okay, the Gay Straight Alliance, and then we find this trash in Cedar Cliff High School. Okay, and for him to claim that he had no knowledge of it, that's a lie. Gaslighting. This is why I will encourage Region 3 to vote for Sandra Gonzalez. Because under Brian Geiswhite's leadership, this district suffered financially and in other ways. Okay. And like I stated, these two books that you see under his picture, Gender Queer and The Black Flamingo, these books are still in the West Shore School District schools. Gender Queer was hidden. That book was hidden. In the fall of 2024, it was reported to me by my sons and the children of other parents that I won't name them because they haven't given me permission as of yet to name them, that book was found in Catherine Yo's classroom in Cedar Cliff High School. And Catherine Yo is one of these teachers that promotes this kind of stuff. Okay. And she did it even with my own kids until I called on the rug on it. And this other book, The Black Flamingo, okay, yeah. Look it up in Amazon and read what it's about, folks. Read what it's about. And then I was reading another book that we found in Cedar Cliff also this year to you guys. I think it was called The Boyfriend or something like that, about a young man falling in love with his sister's boyfriend. And the book talks about his desire to have him, his desire to kiss him, to have intimacy with him. And I'm using, respectful words. I read a few chapters of that book, if you guys remember. What was it called? The Dating List, I think it was called, or The Boyfriend List, something like that. Okay, when I find the actual um, title, I'll come back and let you know. And if you guys remember, I was reading it online for the parents to hear, and I stopped reading it because after reading that book, I felt like I needed to use Clorox on my eyes. But Region 3, we need to get this trash, and I mean the books, okay, out of the West Shore School District. And this man allowed, Brian Geiswhite allowed this material in the West Shore School District and denied the fact that he knew about it while his wife was leading an LGBTQ club. And there's nothing wrong with them having their clubs, okay? But don't sit there and lie, okay, and pretend that you don't know anything when you know that it's there. And then, like I stated, it got worse with Tostos promising that he would investigate. He never investigated. He never got back to us. He slandered us on social media. He slandered us in the news. Okay, everywhere he stood, he slandered us. And now he's gonna come and pretend like he don't know anything. Man, know who you're talking to again. And please, please understand. Understand. In situations like this, you'd rather deal with Mr. Reed than Mrs. Reed because he's reserved. He's intelligent. He's articulate. He can see straight through you. Trust me that he can. He can call BS out in a minute like I can. But the difference is that I'm not going to decorate it. I'm going to call BS BS. If the fish stinks, the fish stinks. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Okay? So before you send me stupid emails, understand who you're speaking with. Okay? Understand who you're speaking with. So I would encourage everybody in Region 3 to please vote in Sandra Gonzalez. She is not only a conservative, okay, because that's part of the positive, but she also believes in bringing back classical education. She will protect parental rights because I honestly believe that something like this will not happen under her watch, okay, and she will address it appropriately. She's for parental rights. She's for parental choice. Okay, she's for protecting our kids, and she's for getting this trash out of the West Shore School District in its entirety. In its entirety. So you want change, and you want to make the West Shore um, a district of excellence like it once was. Vote Sandra Gonzalez in. And for Region 2, we have Terry Mickle running, and Terry Mickle's a hot mess. She's a hot mess. Just this week, she gets on ABC News with Danielle Gross, who is a teachers union advocate, to talk against the Rentland project. Okay, and she's calling it a stadium. It's not a stadium. It's a football field. It's just a dirt football field with some bleachers. It's not going to be as grandiose as Cedar Cliff High School is. Okay. But she gets there to say that these are not necessary expenditures. You know what? Let me tell you something, lady. These kids in Rentland have been waiting for decades for this. And they deserve equality when it comes to resources. Resources, whether it's athletic fields, whether it's music, whether it's library, material. What it should be equal, and it seems to a lot of us that Cedar Cliff gets everything, and everybody ignores Redland. This field needs to come into fruition, and shame on Seth Kaplan from ABC 27 that is being led by the nose by Danielle Gross, who is a teachers union advocate. He's becoming her puppet, giving these stories the spin that she wants to give the spin to without investigating into the truth of the matter. And even when they have shown up to the school board, they hear the truth and they report a lie because he and Danielle D. Gross are friends. But in a way, I'm glad that Terry Mickle did what she did because that further solidifies the fact that this is the candidate that you don't want to vote in Region 2. Save your vote. This is not the candidate that you want to vote in. She has no talking points outside of cyber school bad, cyber school bad, cyber school bad, because she is parroting Adam Chung. And I wonder whether she really wants to run or not. Because she really has nothing on the plate to offer. And then to try and make these statements and try to be dismissive of the need of the Redland, high school kids, um, it's really disgusting. It's really pathetic. So Region 2, save your vote. You want a real candidate. You want a candidate that's really gonna, protect the Red Land Project, a candidate that has bought money and grants, okay, in for the Red Land Project, okay, and a candidate that is doing everything in her power to make sure that this natatorium is repaired, because we have many parents come out, okay, in reference to the natatorium in the condition that it's in. Okay, kids were probably getting hurt, or at the point of getting hurt. The heat was so bad in there that a lady I remember brought in her cell phone, and her cell phone, the humidity damaged her phone because of the condition of the natatorium. And for people to say that it does not need to be repaired, yes, it needs to be repaired, because not only, is one of the curriculums swimming and teaching our kids to swim, but that natatorium is also, man, a lot of people don't know this, open to the public, to the community to use also. A lot of people can't, afford to go to, expensive, pricey places. So why not take them to the natatorium, take the kids to swim and have a good little time there, but and have something to do. And in today's economy, that's a blessing. Having an auditorium that you can take your kids to, especially if you're broke like a joke, that's a blessing. And then they want to take that away too. Oh, because Redlands Pearl is the natatorium. Well, the pearl is breaking apart. The pearl needs the prongs to be fixed because it's about to fall off that ring. And this is a natatorium that's over 50 years old. Of course, it's going to be in disrepair. So, Region 2, if you really want a candidate that cares, okay, and that has kept, her promises when it comes to the Redland Project and this natatorium, and now, protecting our girls in sports when Terry Mickle actually is endangering our girls because she didn't want that policy to pass. If you really want somebody that's going to protect your girls, and somebody who's going to bring that Red Land Project to fruition, somebody that has already bought in grant money for that project, and possibly could bring in grant money for the rest of the natatorium, that person that you want is Kelly Brent. We need to keep Kelly Brent in that seat. So Region 2, the person you should vote for is Kelly Brent. So with that being stated, again, I will advise Tastos, if you want to contact me, it better be by email because I don't want to even hear your voice. Okay, because you have proven yourself to me to be untrustworthy. Okay, not efficient, pathetic in many ways, and so have Brian Geiswhite for lying that this was not happening in the West Shore, for saying that these books were not in the West Shore when he knew they were. So, guys, I needed to share this with you today. I nearly fell off my chair. Okay. I thank you for listening to me rant, because I'm probably the only crazy maniac out here at midnight doing this. But we need to get the truth out there. We need to get the truth out there. Region 3, say goodbye to Guy White and hello to Mrs. Gonzalez. Welcome, Mrs. Gonzalez, in. Region 2, we need to keep Kelly Brent in that seat because, like I stated before, you vote for Mickle, you're going to get in a pickle. So, this is the truth of what happened. When he stated that, I nearly fell off my seat. Okay, then Mr. Stokes had the audacity to send me that email. You already heard my reply. If he likes it, fine. If he doesn't, oh well, but don't play with me. And this is Mariana from the boiling point, signing out. Wait a minute. My husband just got here. Would you like to share with everybody the experience you had when we brought to the attention of Brian Geiswhite and Todd Stokes about the book Gender Queer?
I suppose I can. Yes.
Okay, and do you want to give them your input on this library policy?
Sure.
Okay, so guys, so this is a special edition. So we got my husband, okay, who's gonna further solidify what I just said. Okay. And here is Casey Reed. And please, guys, remember rule of thumb. Rule of thumb. You rather deal with Mr. Reed and not Mrs. Reed. Because Mrs. Reed, she's a Puerto Rican. And in the words of Brian Geiswhite in one meeting, she's a freaking Puerto Rican. You got that right. Because I will fight tooth and nail for my family and yours. So I'm going to leave you with Casey. Casey, do you want my headphones?
Sure.
Here you go.
Good evening, folks. Okay, so this was not planned, and I'm sure Mariana has already shared with you the details of our experiences with bringing these things to light. Now, I do want to be fair, not excusing at all, but fair to Dr. Stoltz and Brian Geiswait and others on the board at the time I brought it up. More than likely, they were unaware of this stuff. I would like to give them the benefit of the doubt. They were probably unaware. Now, of course, they're caught in a conundrum, particularly Brian Geiswait. At the time, he was president of the board. And at that time, his wife, Mrs. Geiswait, was uh, the chief librarian of the West Shore School District. She was also the head of the LGBTQ club. I believe it's called the Gay and Straight Alliance, something like that. But she was the head of one of those organizations. So now you're in a spot. If you're Mr. Geiswait, you're the president of the board. Your wife is the head of all this LGBTQ activism, as well as the chief librarian. So, in order to adequately address the issue, you would have to deal with your own spouse and hold her to account. And then she would be forced to hold her own people to account. So, which would create a conflict of interest, not to mention making things difficult at home for Mr. Geiswait, but also very uncomfortable for Mrs. Geiswait if she were to take it seriously and to try to find the problem if she was not already aware of it and to deal with it and nip it in the bud. Now, you also face the problem of ideology. We know from the board's past policies under Geiswait's leadership, as well as Mrs. Geiswait's running of the libraries, that this stuff happened for a reason. Even if she or him weren't active in putting these kind of books there or sneaking in them or whatever, they were complacent to it because they do support those agendas. So there's a lot of, there's been a lot of heavy activism within the schools. I mean, setting just the books aside, when we went into the back to school night at Cedar Cliff in August of 2022, my jaw was basically on the floor the entire time. It was like the whole school was a giant pride parade. Every other classroom had a little rainbow plaque out the side saying, a gay or LGBTQ friendly. You saw rainbow flags all over the place, or at least little plaques of them. The library had a huge rainbow flag in it, and whole sections of nothing but LGBTQ promotion. Now look, this is not about. This goes far beyond quote being tolerant or not condemning people and all that other fun stuff about their lifestyle. This is proselytization. This is promotion. This is blatant trying to recruit and convert people, particularly students, into these lifestyles. And it begs the question, why? For what purpose? If they think it's so important to learn about these matters, then let's make it educational and not doctrinal. Okay, let's not make it a dogma that you're trying to push, because not to mention that this is also in direct opposition to the religious, cultural, and political beliefs of probably half the students' parents in the district. So, what right do you have to take their taxpayer money and then use it for your own propaganda, your own religion, your own cultural biases? That's just wrong. If you're going to focus on these matters, at the very least, there needs to be some other perspectives. It's amazing to me that those who are always promoting diversity are or at least so-called, are the ones that either ignore or oppose the most important diversity of all. In fact, maybe the only important diversity that should be promoted when you're talking about education. That's the diversity of perspective, not only on this issue, but others as well. You will find many politically oriented books in these libraries, not just the West Shore. This is a nationwide problem. I mean, almost every school library or school library system in the country has books by extreme, and I'm talking about ultra left, anti-Christian, anti-American, anti-Western pro-Marxist, pro-communist authors like Howard Zinn and Ibrahim Kendi X, and these authors are very popular, as well as several others of their same stripes. But good luck finding something written by somebody like, Glenn Beck or Steve Dace, or even Ben Shapiro, who's a more mainstream guy, more well-known and popular. These people are virtually non-existent in the public school libraries. So if we're going to be fair and truly make it education and not indoctrination, what we should do is get rid of all the porn, all the perversity, all the highly inappropriate behavior that, quite frankly, people should be in prison for even publishing. I mean, I know that there are millions of people in prison around this country, thousands in Pennsylvania alone, for downloading the kind of crap on their computers that's in many of these school library books. And it has no business being there. And there needs to be more accountability. This stuff needs to get out. This is not education. This is filth. I happen to know firsthand, for a fact, I know this from firsthand knowledge, that a very common tactic, in fact, the most common tactic when it comes to preparing their victims, if they have time to do it in advance for pedophiles in their grooming, is to expose their victims to sexually graphic material. That is the primary tactic used by groomers to prepare their victims to be accepting and more vulnerable to their advances without resistance or without ratting them out. They desensitize them by exposing them to extremely pornographic materials. And so when we say these people are groomers, we're not just engaging in gratuitous name calling. They are literally sexually grooming children. You are doing the pedophile's job for them, and you're using taxpayer money to do it. Nothing more evil I can imagine could you be using education for. These are public tax dollars you're talking about here, and you're using them to literally commit one of the most vile, felonious crimes one can imagine. And it needs to stop. And there needs to be some ways to weed this out and replace it with truly educational material. For elementary school kids, they should bring in the books by the Tuttle twins. Very educational and entertaining material for younger children about the founding of America and our history and our heritage, and its accurate history. It's not this rewritten garbage by so-called progressives in the early 20th century who had an axe to grind and had a little chip on their shoulder about America and its heritage. Why not bring that in? Why not bring materials in if you're going to discuss this whole LGBTQ stuff? That's not pornographic, but is informational and scientific. Stuff that's been done by the Family Research Council. Hey, you might consider it controversial, but what about balance and perspective? Why do you have to only promote it? Why don't we hear something from the other side? Why don't we hear some verified statistics, many of them done by homosexual scientists themselves, that really put a lot of light on the effects of these lifestyles, not only with those who practice them, but with those around them and those who they love and their friends and family and so forth. Why not put these statistics out there? What do you have to fear? I think the answer to that question is obvious. So, there needs to be more balance and perspective, not only in the teaching of this and other matters, but also the obsession on these topics needs to end. And I remember when I talked to Brian Geiswade about this after the meeting, one of the things he said that he was uncomfortable with the idea of book banning. Now, as I explained to him, I said, well, Mr. Geiswade, if book banning, quote, is not having a book in a public school library, well, then by that definition, then already, no matter what, over 99.999% of the world's books are already banned. I mean, think about it. I don't know the exact number of total books there are on this planet, especially all of the ones that have been published from the beginning of time till now and the ones that are still available, but I'm pretty sure it's in the trillions. All right. You can't fit more than a certain number of thousand books, many thousands maybe, but maybe 20, 30,000 at the most in a public school library. So by that definition, nearly every book in the planet is already banned. And again, we're not talking about banning anything. Banning a book would be making it illegal to purchase and putting somebody in jail for either selling it or buying it. That would be banning a book. Nobody's even considering this, even though they should, quite frankly, with some of these books, because they are child pornography. But I digress. They're just simply saying, hey, let's not use our taxpayer dollars to push this on our children. That's not banning at all. And let's get something educational. Let's get something that they actually learn something instead of just being exposed to smut. I was I saw a little clip afterwards because I didn't have time to watch it. I had other things to do tonight. But I believe it was Mr. Gay that actually compared these books to Shakespeare. Are you ever loving kidding me? Seriously? Come on, man. You can't possibly believe the words that came out of your own mouth. I've read Shakespeare. And as anybody that's ever read Shakespeare knows full well, there's nothing even remotely close in any of his writings, anything like that. Yeah, he makes some vague references to intimate encounters, but he doesn't get graphic. There's nothing in there about secretions or orgasmic spasms or penetrations or detailed descriptions of sexual organs. Nothing like that in any Shakespeare writing. Come on. It's, you know better than that. That's absurd. It would be funny if it weren't so sick. Come on, Shakespeare, please. But anyway, there needs to be some kind of systems put in place. Letting the superintendent do this like the way they were just doing earlier in the year, who's partially responsible for this in the first place, either through negligence, unawareness, which at best I could give them the benefit of the doubt there, or at worst case scenario, being one of the perpetrators of promoting it. Obviously he hasn't taken care of this issue. And as I think I heard Mariana allude to earlier, he actually stopped a school board member from even investigating. And these things need to be investigated. There needs to be policies put in place that allow parents and parents groups to have access to these libraries in real time. Because there's also a lot of shenanigans that goes on. I know earlier, toward the end of last year, in a school board meeting, I had brought to the attention to the school board one specific graphic novel that had been discovered at Cedar Cliff, right? What was it called?
Girl from the Sea.
Girl from the Sea, yes. And when I brought it before the school board in the meeting, I said that this was in Cedar Cliff High School. And when we looked in the website under the library catalog, it was. The next day, somebody informed me it's not at Cedar Cliff. Well, now it was in New Cumberland Middle School. Did they move it the next day just because of that school board meeting? I mean, that's rather coincidental. All of a sudden, it's not at Cedar Cliff the next day after I brought it up, and it's at New Cumberland Middle School, which is even worse. I mean, come on. So these things need to have accountability. There needs to be some system in place where, if a library catalog can only be, if it's going to be updated and you're going to move books, there should be a time period that has to remain in the same library. So thorough investigation can be done. There needs to be some way to allow parents or parents groups to go into these libraries, to set up a time to do so, and to guarantee that there's no shell game that can be played to move things around so nothing can be discovered. Let the people of the community and people who really have a genuine interest in protecting children's innocence, to investigate these matters. I believe I heard Abigail Tierney mention the fact that children aren't as innocent as we were. That may be. So does that mean we perpetrate the problem or try to be the solution? Are we going to exacerbate that lack of innocence due to the corruption of the culture? Or are we going to be part of the solution instead of the problem? That's one of the most absurd reasonings I've ever heard. Where they already have exposure to this somewhere else, let's do the same thing. It's like, my kids hear cussing all the time from the neighbors. So I'm going to do it in my house all the time too, so they can learn that language. Really? What kind of reasoning is that? You're supposed to set an example, and if you're responsible for children, you're supposed to try to protect their innocence. And when that innocence is violated, have the fortitude and the moral clarity to help them differentiate between right and wrong, and not further their confusion. But I don't know all the details of what should be done yet. It's something we can talk about among the community ourselves. Certainly, the board members discuss among each other, but there has to be a way to allow easier and greater access to the libraries and what's in those libraries in real time and what books are in there. Because as it currently stands, it's basically impossible for a parent who's not a full-time employee of the district to gain access to those libraries and those books to see what's really going on. And as any parent who can tell you who's tried to do so, they make it extremely difficult, and they need to reform those policies to change that. So anyway, I believe that's all I have for now. But everyone have a good night. Hopefully this will be dealt with in the future. I want to commend Heidi Thomas for bringing this to light. I thank you very much for making this an issue and finally dealing with something that's been a problem for a long time, and the solution is far overdue. So, and I hope the rest of the board follows suit, and that soon we will have some meaningful reforms to start cleaning up our libraries and getting back to education instead of indoctrination. Get back to learning instead of sexual grooming, instead of promoting pedophilia. And I'm going to end with something that I know many are going to be offended by. But let's not kid ourselves. The promotion of the LGBTQ agenda in and of itself is inherently pedophilic. Now, let me make it very clear that I'm not saying that everyone who is a homosexual is a pedophile. That's certainly not the case. And even, there are many who have common sense. I mean, there is the organization Gays Against Groomers, for example, who actively oppose this nonsense and say, keep the kids out of it, keep our activities, in privacy between consenting adults. Okay, so there are many, millions of people in the gay and lesbian lifestyles who are not for all this sexual grooming of children. Just like there are, people who are transvestites and transsexuals who do not support men invading women's locker rooms and restrooms and sports. The most famous one is Bruce Jenner, who now goes by Caitlyn Jenner. Even he has said that it's ridiculous and absurd to allow, biological males to compete against women in sports or go into their restrooms and locker rooms. He said that. Okay. So there are those within those communities who practice those lifestyles, who do not go along with all this. But the greater agenda of what I affectionately refer to as the rainbow jihad or the alphabet mafia, they are inherently pedophilic, and they promote this stuff for a reason, because pedophilia is one of the things within that whole alphabet liaison that is at the very least not condemned and at the most actively promoted. They even use the word MAPS. They call them MAPS instead of minor attracted persons. Let's get this very clear. They're not MAPS. They are pedophiles, perverts, predators. And those are the only words that should ever be used to describe those people. Perverts, pedophiles, predators, not MAPS, not minor attracted persons. Don't sugarcoat an absolute evil. And that's exactly what you do when you allow them to play these word games and accept their terminology. And I don't want to get on too much of a rant, but I've said this before and I'll say it again. I will never, ever, ever, ever use the term gender affirming care in a serious context. Everything about that is literally the polar opposite of of affirming or caring. Butchering somebody's private parts is not affirming or caring. It's just the opposite. Mutilating someone's genitals does not qualify as either affirming or caring. So we are up against this evil agenda. It is pedophilic. I've also mentioned in 2022 where I saw personal live footage of events going on over in Harrisburg. Right outside the state capitol. Now, I don't know if they do it every year, but I know in 2022 there was a day during Pride Month in June where they had young children. I'm talking about under the age of 10, dressed in drag and doing strip teases on makeshift stripper poles outside the Capitol building there in Harrisburg, outside the state capitol, to a crowd of cheering adults. And it was during the Pride celebrations. So again, and I'm not. I know it'll offend a lot of people, but I don't care. We got to be real about this. The whole promotion of this whole LGBTQ plus everything is inherently pedophilic, and the activist groups behind it support that. And why, in the name of everything that's holy, would you want anything to do with that in the public schools at taxpayer expense? And the pornographic novels is just one part of it, but it's a major part of it. So, folks, we need to oppose this evil, and it begins there. So, God bless. Have a good night. Talk to you again soon.
Trapped again, and fate as always has me wrapped again. I always get caught in my life of sin, but I just keep on going back again. I'm lost again, when all I wanted was to find a friend, someone that I can always depend on to help me find my life again.